Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in again. This is Steve Taylor, once again, the founder and lead advisor at Merited Wealth. And tuning in, we're recording another episode of the Do It For Yourself podcast today. Really, if you haven't tuned in before, what I like to do in this format is really invite those people out there that are kind of doing it for themselves, that started businesses, grew it from the ground up, or different variations of doing it for themselves, and just kind of talk to them, have an open conversation about their business, kind of why they get into it, the ups and downs of it. And the idea is hopefully those out there that are listening to this, that you might get some nuggets of wisdom and some experience, from those on here. So hopefully not to repeat mistakes of past, but hopefully they'll also spot opportunities and the like. And so today I'm really excited to have this conversation. This is an industry I know absolutely nothing about. That's why I'm excited to dive into it. Iggy, give us a little introduction about yourself, and maybe talk a little bit about your background that got you into the business that you're in now.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity. So my name's Ignacio Garcia-Menocal. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Growth Bay Hospitality Group. We're a local Miami-based group that's been around roughly a little over 10 years. We have a total of 14 restaurants, some street side here in Miami and some in airports throughout the country. So we have two divisions, the regular traditional restaurants and then the airport restaurants. We're actually going to open our first street side restaurant outside of Miami, probably next June. That'll be a Stubborn Seat in Vegas, in Las Vegas on the Strip. So, that'll be very exciting for us. We have three of our restaurants are listed in the Michelin Guide. There's only 68 restaurants in Miami that are on the Michelin Guide, so having three in there is really an honor. One of them has a one Michelin star, Stubborn Seat, the one that we're opening in Vegas, and we have roughly 700 employees, and we've grown very, very quickly over the last 10 years, and that's something that we're very proud of. We've been voted one of the best large companies to work for here in Miami, which I think is an honor because we try to do our best to make our people happy, and and we just keep doing our thing.
That's awesome. Now, Iggy, we've known each other for a long time, and we've each had our different ways we've gone about stuff. But the restaurant business, this was nothing early on, right? That you don't come from a family of restaurateurs and the like.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit about briefly your background and how you kind of,
Yeah.
not gonna say stumbled, but got into this business.
Yeah, no, I definitely stumbled into the business. I mean, like you said, you and I know each other, and we're both we worked together a long time ago at Deloitte and Touche. So you know my background a little more than most. So I'm a CPA by trade, and and I worked at Deloitte and Touche for 6 years. I left Deloitte to join MasterCard as the director of accounting for the Latin American region, and I was there about a year. And I get a call from one of our former, Deloitte colleagues. You may remember him, Ray Bellata. Do you remember Ray?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Ray called me out of the blue one time. I was at work, and he's like, "Hey, the Shula family is looking for a CFO. Would you mind going to an interview with them?" I gave them, your name. And I was like, "Ray, I don't know anything about the restaurant industry other than I like to eat and drink. That's about it. Listen, I just got to MasterCard. I've only been here a year. Let me think about it, and I'll call you tomorrow." I get home that night, and I get a random phone call from Dave Shula, Coach Shula's oldest son, who was a president of the company at the time, and he was running the family business. And he's like, "Hey, Ig, this is Dave Shula. I got your number from Ray. I hope it's okay. I'm calling you. Would you mind coming in and meeting with my dad and I?" I was like, "Okay." When you get a call from Dave Shula, and I remember watching Dave when I was, growing up, when I was younger, coaching on the sidelines of the Dolphins under his dad, and then he coached under Jimmy Johnson for the Cowboys, and then he was a head coach for the Bengals for a few years before leaving and to go run the family business. So when somebody like that offers you the opportunity, you can't say no. Again, even though I didn't know anything about it. So I went ahead and met with them. And, when you walk in, you see the Super Bowl trophies and the Hall of Fame jacket in their office and coach and all that. And you're like, listen, I kind of like this. This is kind of cool. So I ended up joining. Again, I didn't know. I thanked them for taking a chance on me because even though I knew the CFO side, the financial side, I didn't know anything about the industry. But early on, I found that I just loved it, man, because because I enjoyed eating and drinking. That's kind of my passion, trying new restaurants and all that. And now it seemed like my passion and my work were like kind of one of them the same. So that was kind of neat. So what I did is I just took it upon myself those first couple of years of doing everything I could to learn everything about the industry. I took every single course I could, online course, seminars. I read like dozens of books. I spent a lot of time talking to the operations guys so I can kind of learn the operations side of it. I got a certificate of food service management from Cornell University, which is the top hospitality school in the country. So again, I did everything I could, and then over time, I just kind of learned it and ended up doing my own thing from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's a great lesson for anybody out there. You're looking to get in whatever business it is, really, whether you've been
Yeah,
in it or not. Just immerse yourself, right? Take
yeah,
courses, talk with people, sit down, learn. That's the way you get it. It's amazing how quickly of an education you can get out there just doing it, right? You don't need to get a
right.
MBA or these different things. That's really the greatest way to go.
Yeah,
So Iggy, let's I want to jump into it and really actually what one of my started my this video recording, somewhat podcasting, let's call it career, is I remember during COVID, a good friend of mine, Alex Almazan and myself sat
sure,
down with one of
Alex.
your partners, right? And we were in the freaking middle of it. Everything was shut down. What are we going to do? I think you guys were pivoting hard toward takeout and different stuff like that. Walk us through, and really what's kind of what you've seen, what's happened in the business, what's, maybe, through that time, what you did right, maybe what you did wrong, or, how that period of time really kind of shaped, and changed the business as you knew it. Because up to that point, there was one thing you learned anything, but then all the rules kind of changed.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the most stressful part of my entire career, obviously, because we didn't know we were going to come back. Our cash was running out for all of our different entities. So we thought we were going to go bankrupt, just like pretty much everybody else in our industry and other industries. But one of the things that I think we did well, we base our company. Actually, let me take a step back. When I got into the restaurant industry, one of the things that I noticed early on it was like the wild west.
Mhm.
There's a lot of just people not treating other people right, etc. It was this industry was really, in my opinion, behind some other industries. And you and I, coming from Deloitte, one of the top 100 companies to work for, in the country, there's a lot of things that I took from there and that I implemented within our company in terms of core values. And one of them is people focus and really taking care of each other. We've terminated people for saying "F you," which happens all the time in the kitchen, but we've taken a stance that that's not how we're going to talk to each other and treat each other. So fast forward to COVID, what I'm proud of is that we didn't steer away from those core values. So while everything was very difficult, once the PPA money came in, which was to pay your employees, a lot of people in our industry and a lot of people in general kept that money and
Hmm.
waited to reopen. We made the decision. You know what? We're going to go ahead and just pay it out, even though everybody's at home. We're just going to pay it out. So we always joke that was the worst financial decision we ever made, but that was the right moral decision. Because we paid $2 million to have people sit at home. And
Hmm.
again, would have been a smarter business decision just to wait and hold the money to be able to reopen. But we felt, if let's stick to our core values, and that's the right thing to do. People are struggling. People are not getting paychecks. People have mortgages. So so let's do the right thing.
Iggy, I love that. Your core values. What are the core values?
So number one is exceptional hospitality. Number two, people focus. Number three, community, and then last is performance. So we feel that if you take care of the guests and they have an exceptional experience, if you are taking care of your people, like I just gave an example, and if you're a part of the community, then the kind of performance and profits should take care of themselves. So to kind of speak as to the third core value, community. So we just did a partnership with the FIU School of Hospitality, where we're going to provide $280,000 worth of scholarships over a 5-year period. We started last year, we already funded last year, we already funded this year. So that provides 8 scholarships for hospitality for kids, for underprivileged kids that want to study hospitality that really couldn't afford it. So that's a full scholarship for 8 students.
Mhm.
So again, So we live by these core values. So during COVID, we did the same thing, and we did the right thing. And we were blessed enough that we were able to come out of it. Yes, during those months, we try to claw and just try to get by with takeout, but that's a very small percentage of the sales. That didn't even pay rent. We were blessed enough that we had, very good landlords. And I think it was a time that everybody was helping each other. You know what I mean? Everybody's in the same boat. So, we had some great landlords helped us, and the banks helped us. And so, so we got out of it, luckily. And actually, we went from our worst year in 2020 to 2021 and 22 were, two of our best years. So I think, I like to think that we had some karma and some,
Yeah, so walk me through that, Iggy, right? So 2020 was terrible, and you're figuring it out, and you made that decision to stick to your core values, which I think is awesome, right? That's a good lesson to anybody out there when you're going through the business, when it's tough, you're not sure where to go. Well, just remember who you are, right? Remember who you are and what you're focused on.
Right.
But then 2021, I guess you could come back a little bit to business as usual, maybe, right? And get people in there. So maybe talk about that as 2021, 2022, you said it grows. Did you go back to, maybe the stuff you had done before, which made you successful? Did anything change, or kind of, how did that look, coming out of this, to really attribute to that success?
Yeah, so 21 was a very, very interesting year for a lot of reasons, because we're pretty much back to pre-COVID sales. So we're very busy. If you remember during that time, Miami was a very unique situation compared to maybe other cities in the country, because Miami opened very early on. And restaurants opened early on compared to other big cities, and really compared to other countries as well. So if you recall, during that year, everybody came to Miami, right? Miami's packed with tourists and people moving down here for a few months at a time, etc. So the restaurants were busy. But what happened in the same time is that the federal government had extended the unemployment benefits all through, so we still had a lot of people not working. You know what I mean? So we were a full speed in sales, but with only partly staffed. So 2021 was a very, very difficult year. I called it blood money because, yes, we did well, but I know we didn't do our best in terms of the guest experience, just because we didn't have the people. And so if a server normally takes 3 or 4 tables, they were taking 7 or 8 tables. That's not a good experience. We know that. And man, we're doing our best to try to get people to come in. But so that was a challenging year that that we had. And then by 2022, everybody, Miami was already pretty much, back to the normal staffing levels.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Iggy, you guys are growing, right? You're saying you're taking your brand out to Vegas. That's interesting that in the airports, I see a lot of different brands in there and that kind of model. What would you say, kind of like how you guys have done it, and maybe, and not, don't throw anybody, under the bus, like maybe the other companies you worked for, or the ones you've seen and stuff like that. Kind of how do you guys, do it? How do you think a little different, right? That would attribute to why your brand has been, been so successful and moving, moving through and growing, as opposed to, what you hear about restaurants, right? What is it? 9 out of 10 fail, or whatever it might be. Like what do you think this is the secret sauce of why you guys have continued to grow?
I would say it's a few things. I think the first thing, and we talked about earlier that I got into the business sort of by dumb luck, which I did, but with that same dumb luck, my background in business sort of helped us, a lot. I think our industry has a high failure rate, because what happens more often than not is that you have a chef, or you have maybe a front of house operator that has an idea, has a concept, he gets an investor, and they go to open a restaurant. The entry barriers are pretty low. You can, a little bit of money and you can do it, right? But what's the issue? While a chef may be great at what he does, he or she does in terms of the kitchen, man, there's a lot more to running a restaurant. If you, from the get-go, if you start a bad lease, you're toast, right? So, you got to know about legal, you got to know about PR, marketing, insurance, banking, HR, accounting. There's so much more that you need to know about than just, operations. So I think restaurants fall short because they don't understand the business side. Just because you have a great menu, and there's a famous saying, or just because a restaurant's packed, it doesn't mean it's making money. So and that's true. It's very true. So I think what made us different is myself and also my partner Francesco is that we're both business guys that learned operations. You know, we did it backwards. So I think having that foundation, having the right systems, the right processes, you know, people say it is a penny business, you know, and it is. So it has helped us stay, profitable. So that's first. Second is our the way that we've made these partnerships with chefs, with celebrity chefs. I don't think there's any group down here in Miami or even really in Florida that has a collection of celebrity chef partners that we have. So for example, from Jeremy Ford, who won Top Chef and won the Michelin, to Marcus Samuelsson, who's one of the most famous chefs in the world, to Jeff McInnes, Janine Booth, on and on. We're doing a Bobby Flay, partnership down in Raleigh that was announced recently. So why that works is because chefs realize that we bring value to the table. So instead of them worrying about operations, like, let me partner with these guys, they'll take care of everything, and let me just focus on cooking, which is what I do best. So that's kind of the model that we do, for most of the restaurants, not all, that's worked really well. And I think lastly is, going back to our core values. I think some, people who are A players kind of, gravitate towards that, and they appreciate that, that we have some sort of compass, moral compass as to how we do things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know a lot of the big names, all these chefs became really, the last 10 or 20 years, right, with the internet and TV and everybody and Top Chef and all that, that became these celebrities. They get really high on themselves, and probably not unlike, movie stars and athletes, right? And they say, oh, I'm just going to do it because they're going to come by me, and they don't really, see it. So what would you say? Let's say there's somebody out there. I think this is how many of these, these ideas come up, and how, normal people become famous chefs. Let's say they're a really good cook, right? They're a really good cook. They like doing it. They decide they're going to make this jump, kind of go out and open up their own little restaurant, like 5 or 6 tables, right, in a corner, or different things like that. For anyone like that, right, and the chef and stuff like that, like what are some thoughts and some words of advice for them when they're out there and trying to maybe kind of get this up and running, and when would it maybe be time to maybe contact a group like yours to say, hey, you're at X level, we're going to help you go to the next level, to kind of give these aspiring, chefs, kind of the best chance of success?
What's funny is that, we actually have chefs, young chefs that join us, and they're very honest about, listen, I'm here because I want to learn, I'm going to work my butt off, but in a few years, I want to do my own thing. So that's, and we embrace that, and that's great. Let us teach you as much as we can, and hopefully you can be a huge success. And, we've had people move on and do well for themselves. But that's what I would tell them, to join sort of an established group. Learn under, if you're a chef, if that's your track, learn under some really, really well-known chefs, or really, recognized chefs, or chefs that have won a lot of awards and that are obviously great, culinarians. Jeremy Ford is a great example. He has a slew of people that want to learn under him. So do that. But also I would encourage, and what I tell our chefs all the time, going back to my earlier point about the business side, again, because chefs think with one part of the brain, they're very artistic and they do a great job. But if you want to do your own thing, you got to start paying attention to the other side of the brain as well. You got to learn the business side. So we make a big emphasis on teaching them, how to do a schedule, how to do labor, or, how to do payroll, how to manage your food costs, how to order, how to take inventory. Those are critical things, when you're in a restaurant, because if you don't know how to do that, you're going to fail 100%. So I think our young folks, kind of those that have interest in moving on and doing their own thing, eventually sort of embrace that, and they do want to learn. And you can see that they're asking for more. Let me do this, let me learn this. Which is great.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Iggy. That's great advice, right? To join anyone really in any professional career, before you just go out and do it yourself, right? Join a bigger group, learn it, be a sponge, learn as much as you can, like you did. You got under the great name, the Shulas, learn, be a sponge. Get out there, learn it before, because you just don't know what you don't know. So, in this proliferation of all these celebrity chefs, right? I think back, and I don't remember Hell's Kitchen, right? Or this Gordon Ramsay, or there's this this FX TV show Bear, right? There is this this idea that working in these kitchens and for these chefs is like miserable, that you're going to get yelled at, that you're going to get beaten down and whatever it might, be. And I know you'd probably go to your core values, how you treat it. I mean, is that kind of how it is in most of these kitchens
It can be very
and these kids?
stressful.
It can be
Yeah,
tough.
it can be very tough because when you have a full dining room, 250 guests, and they're all wanting their food, and you have X amount of people in the kitchen, and you're trying to get the food out as fast as possible with the same consistency and perfection, that's expected of the chef and of ownership. It's tough on those cooks because it's a high pressure situation. They got to work fast. They're on their feet for a lot of hours at once. I'll give you an example. I was just doing Art Basel this week. Red Rooster, the Sunday brunch. I mean, we're busy all week, but Red Rooster brunch on Sunday was a madhouse, apparently. Our corporate chef went to help out. He said he didn't sit down for 14 hours straight.
Wow.
That he didn't go to the bathroom for 14 hours because he's on the line because it never stopped. So that's that. Not a lot of people can do that. I have a lot of respect for the restaurant folks and for the folks that are in the back of the house. It's high stress. It's hot, because you got the all the kitchen equipment that produces a lot of heat. And sometimes when you're busy, you're not sitting down for hours, and you're not eating nothing. So even with all those difficult situations, you can still have a situation which is respectful. You know what I mean? Because your examples of cursing and even throwing pans and throwing plates, it's happened. It happens. I think it's less nowadays, but that's true. So we don't accept that. Not that somebody doesn't slip once in a while and the pressure situation says something, and so we but we control that.
Yeah, interesting, Iggy, and I like to go back. You talked to at the beginning, you guys, you're opening up different restaurants, as a Vegas opportunity. You mentioned Raleigh, but what's really interesting is you mentioned something in the airports, right? That kind of food service in airports, and that just speaks to, like any good business, like whenever you can diversify, right, and get these different streams of revenue out there. How did that come about? Why did you guys get into that? Do you plan to do more of that to that other area? How big a part of this is your future? Because that's really interesting because, like you said, you guys are known for your Michelin star rated restaurants, but now you're getting into more stuff. How did that come about, and how excited are you about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Nobody really knows about this, sister, division that we have, which is in, restaurant operations. So we're in Seattle. We have 2 in Seattle. We have 3 in Providence Airport, and that's going to grow to 8 over the next 12 months. We have 2 in Raleigh, and that's going to grow to 8 over the next 12 months or so as well. And then we have 2 here in the Miami airport. So we do have, I think, more restaurants and airports than actually street side, but everybody knows us for our street side restaurants. How that came about is my partner Francesco. So we had very similar tracks, believe it or not. He's a CPA as well. He was with Ernst & Young. He ended up landing a job as the CFO of Areas. Areas is a very large airport concessions company. So that was his experience. My experience was in the street side. So that's kind of how the 2 sister, not companies, but the 2 sister, divisions kind of came up through my background and through his in airports. I think, going back to your point of, being diversified, I think a great example of that was really during COVID. Going back to the COVID, where our street side restaurants were really struggling because all we had was takeout. Our airports were open right away, and while sales were down, that was creating enough revenue for us to kind of keep the company alive. So having that, being diversified is very, very important. So that's kind of how I came about. But what's interesting and what's happening recently, which is why we won Raleigh recently, we won 8 locations there, is that airports in general, and even smaller airports, are shifting away from the traditional TGI Fridays and stuff like that into more local, more chef-driven, more local breweries kind of concepts. So what we're able to present with what we did in Raleigh is say, hey, look at what we do street side. We can create our own restaurants. Number 1. Number 2, we already have the know-how of how to partner with chefs. We can do this in the airport. So in Raleigh, for example, we partnered up with one of their local celebrity chefs. His name is Scott Crawford. He's been, James Beard nominated 5 times. He's a great local chef there. Everybody knows him, and they really wanted him. So we said, hey, we can do it. We can create the concepts. He's a chef, and we'll operate. So that's something that that was very attractive to them. So we're doing exactly what we're doing on the street side, but just presenting it, in a different format through the airports.
Really, really interesting. I love that, Iggy. You go there and you learn these different ideas. You're diversifying, but you know what you do good. You find the talent. You're the business person. This is where we come from. This is what we're good at. We're not the one that's going to be plating these magnificent dishes. You partner with
Right.
them, and
Yeah.
it just becomes a win-win. And I think that's that's awesome. That's a great lesson for anyone really in any business out there, right?
Yeah.
Know what you're good at, and bring in other people where it's not your strength.
You know, what's interesting that you just said, and I'll give you a great example. So when we started our company early on, it was like 5 employees. Like I mentioned to you, the whole core values was very important. So we hired this consultant, and we were going through different exercises, and then he asked a question. This is almost 10 years ago, and it really stuck in my mind. And then he asked a question. He said, "What is the reason?" He asked a group, it was maybe like 4 or 5 of us. He asked, "What's the reason that most people fail in business and relationships and anything?" And everybody's like, lack of experience, they're dumb, all
Right.
sorts of, and he said lack of self-awareness. And when you sit back, you're like, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Because if you understand what you're good at, and as it relates to business, if you understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, then all of a sudden, as long as you don't have an ego, right? And it's like, hey, I'm not good at all these things, and that's okay. But these folks can help me, become successful. And as the saying goes, always hire people smarter than you, right? So, and that's very true.
That's wonderful. Again, I love that. I always say, I like to joke that one of my greatest strengths is really knowing all my weaknesses, right? And
Right,
being
right,
self-aware and all of those. And say, I don't know this,
yeah,
figure it out or bring someone in.
100%. But and and you see it all the time. I'm sure you see it as well in your profession. Folks and think that they know everything, and it's like,
Hmm.
come on, nobody knows it. We're human beings, right? Nobody knows everything.
Except
But
our kids, right?
right, right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So listen, buddy, this has been really, really awesome. And so one of the questions I like to ask that when I'm wrapping these up is that if you could go and jump in a time machine and speak to younger Iggy, right? And you figure out the time you want to go back, whatever it might be, and you could go to younger Iggy and relay something and tell him something that you know now, that you've learned now, that you did not know then, that you think would have been most helpful to younger Iggy back then in that situation, what would you tell him?
That's a great question. And I think, and I know exactly the point in time I would go back to, and you're involved with this. I would go back to our fraud audit that we were doing back at Deloitte, because I think you and I probably had some similar feelings doing that.
I remember
As
that.
yeah, as we're doing that project, we sat there going, what are we doing? Like, what is my career? What am I doing? Do I like this? And I was kind of, I don't want to say lost, because it was a good job, obviously. And I really enjoyed my time with Deloitte. It was great, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so what I would do is go back to that time and be like, hey, as long as you work really hard and as long as you do the right thing, the doors end up opening for you, and you end up finding your way. You know what I mean? And so kind of like, don't worry, just work really hard. You may not like this project, and going through all these bank statements that we're going through, it's really boring, but that's fine. It takes time to for things to develop, but just trust the process. And that's kind of looking back, for sure, that's what I would have done.
That's awesome, buddy. That is so funny, man. You just put me in the time machine with you, because I
Right,
remember. I remember we were
right.
both there. There I am.
We're
You're
like,
a
what
CPA.
is
I'm
this?
an attorney. It's like, what the F are we doing here?
Right, right,
Why
right,
are
right,
we
right,
here?
right,
This is what we
right.
signed up for. Yeah,
This is what we signed up for. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
awesome, man. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, man.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's a great word of advice. Just put the work in. They'll work out. Even at the moment, it might feel like you don't know what's going on. Just keep working. Keep that head
Right.
down. People
Yeah.
will call you and say, "Hey, you want to go meet the Shulas?" Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of
Well,
how it works.
that's a great example, right? Because had I done a poor job at Deloitte and had I developed a bad reputation, then Ray would have never called me. right? So that door would have never opened. And even though that door was completely unrelated and it was kind of dumb luck, but you could say that I created my dumb luck because I worked really hard at Deloitte, and I think I had a good reputation. So that door opened because of that. So I think it all comes full circle.
That's awesome, Miggy. That's awesome. I love tie that together. Well, listen, buddy, I really appreciate. Thanks for your time. We'll put this when we put this out there. We'll put links to you guys, all those great chefs, and all that stuff. So I really appreciate your time, Miggy.
All right, Steve. Thank you, buddy. Good to talk to you.